Good morning, everyone. Before we get started today, I have a question for the audience. Well, two questions. How many people in this room are getting ready to go off to college? No one, all right. Well, how many of you guys just have a place in your home where you like to spice it up a little bit? It needs a little bit more decoration. Anybody? See, we got a couple people now. Well, today, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a fun and inexpensive decoration that you can put anywhere in the house. We're going to be making paper flowers. Now, you can see some of the flowers I have on my displays here, and you can make them pretty simple, or you could do like I did and go complicated with a wall hanging like this. These flowers can be made in all different sizes and all different colors. All you need are a few simple supplies. The supplies we're going to be using are normal cardstock paper, these petal templates that I have cut out for us, a ruler, or if you prefer, you can use a bone cutter. A bone cutter, which is a paper tool that you use for rolling paper, and a pair of scissors and a hot glue gun. You can use any heat hot glue gun, or you could use normal tacky glue. You'll just have to wait longer for everything to dry. It's just much easier to use a hot glue gun in this case. So, your first step in making your paper flowers is to use these templates and trace them out onto your sheets of paper. You do this using just a normal pencil, and then once you want to make sure that you have 5 of each size of petal traced on your paper. Once you have that done, you're going to cut them out, and they will look just like this. Once you have all your petals cut out and ready to go, you're going to start curling the petals. You would do this for all sizes of the petals, but today I'm just going to be showing you how to make the largest size for time's sake. You're going to take your flat paper petal and your ruler or your bone curler, and you are going to place it flat on the table just like this. You take your ruler and you pull like that to curl your petal. Now, if they have a little bit too much curve, you can always straighten them out a little bit. One thing that is important to keep in mind while doing this though, is make sure that you're curving your wrist so that when you curl your flower petal, it's getting that proper amount of arch. It took me a little while to get the hang of this. It takes a little bit of practice because you have to make sure you're curling your wrist. You can't just leave this one and just pull. You have to curl it like that. So I'm going to do this for all 5 of my large size petals. Like that. This one's a little curly. You're going to straighten it out a bit. Last one, just like this. You can go over it a couple of times if you need to. And then you should have 5 perfectly curled petals. The next step is to cut a slit in the bottom of each of your petals. Now we're just going to be using our scissors. You're going to cut, you're going to make sure you flatten out the bottoms just a little bit so it's a little easier. And you take your scissors and you cut, for this size of petal, about a 1-inch little divot in the bottom there. And then you're going to do that for all 5. Make sure you flatten the bottom out and then you cut. Now keep in mind, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not down to a science. It doesn't have to be an exact inch. You don't have to get out your ruler and draw the lines and make sure everything is precise. For this step, it's important that you just make sure that you try to keep both sides of your cuts even. One more here, just like that. Now, once you have all your cuts made in the bottom of your petals, it's time to actually fold the petals so that they curl prettily like this. To do that, you're going to take your petal, and you see how this curves? We're going to fold it so that the curved side is facing me. And you're just going to take it and you're going to slip it over just like that and make a very light fold right in that little crease. You want to make sure that you don't fold it too much so that you get a nasty looking crease right in the middle here. You just want a nice subtle fold so that it holds its shape but still looks very pretty and uniform. Then you're just going to take a dot of hot glue and you're going to place it where you want it fold. And it's important that you use just a tiny amount of glue. You don't want to use too much glue in this case because if something does go wrong and you need to pull the petal apart in order to make sure that you can redo it and make it look nice and pretty, using too much glue can cause your paper to rip. You want it to look just like that when it's dry. And you're going to do that for all of your petals. And if you run into a case where your cut isn't quite big enough and you're not getting the fold you wanted, it's never too late to go back and widen the cut just a little bit. Another thing to be careful about while you're working on this is make sure that you are not pushing down directly on the hot glue, because you don't want to burn your fingers. I have done that before, and it is not a good time. So you want to give just a little bit of pressure so that everything sticks, but not enough that that glue spills out and gets on your hand, because that's never a good time. We're going to keep going. We have 2 left here. So I'm going to put one more little dot of glue, fold it, hold it in place so that it dries. As that solidifies, just like that. Put it here. We got our last one. A little dot of glue. Fold it over, hold it in place. That might be a little hot. And then you have all your petals curled just like this. Next, we're going to be moving on to our other step, which is assemble the petals into rings. To do this, we already have this done for our other sizes, as you can see here, but I'm going to be showing you how to do it with our larger size today. We're once again going to be using the hot glue, and yet again, it is important to make sure you only use a little tiny amount, because you want to make sure that if you do make a mistake, you have enough glue that you can pull the petals apart. So, in order to do this, you're going to take your first 2 petals and you're just going to barely overlap them just like that, so that the corners touch and these petals overlap just a bit, but not that they're like on top of each other. You want to make sure you have a nice, pretty arrangement. So, a little tiny dot of glue in this bottom corner like that. Take this petal, set it there so that they are overlapping just a little bit like this, and allow that to settle and dry so that they're stuck together like that. Next, you're going to take your other petals and you're going to repeat the same process and just go around in a circle just like that. So I got my little dot of glue, I put my petal here overlapping just a bit, and it's going to stick like that. We're going to do this for our last 2 petals. Little dot, put that right here in place. You can readjust while the glue is drying a little bit. And as you can see, I have the petals a little bit close here, but one thing that's very good about these flowers is even if they aren't perfect, they're still going to look pretty. None of these flowers is going to be exactly the same, none of them are perfect. Everything's going to have a tiny flaw. So if something goes wrong and it doesn't look quite as even as you'd like, keep in mind that it still will look pretty in the end result. So now we have our final outside ring. Next thing we're going to do is take all 3 sides of the rings. We have the largest, the medium size, and the smallest size, and we are going to glue these together to make the body of our flower. To do that, you take your largest size, take your hot glue, and you start by making a circle of hot glue in the center of your largest ring. Now this is one of those times where you're going to want to use a little bit more glue. So like I've been telling you, just use little dots, and you want to use not too much, but you want to use quite a bit because you want to make sure they stay in place. And while you're doing this, you also want to make sure that you're offsetting the petals just a little bit so that the design flows very nicely as you work inward. Once you've got that glued in, you have your 2 rings put together. Now it is time for the middle ring. You're going to do, once again, another circle of hot glue. It looks like I'm doing another stick here. So you're going to use another circle of hot glue just like that. We're going to take our other ring. We're going to once again offset the petals and make sure everything looks nice and uniform. Push those down just a little bit, pull off any strings of hot glue, and now you've got the main body of your flower. The next step is to cut out 2 little circles to cover up this big hole you've got in the middle here. This hole right here, it's not really going to cause any problems for your flower, but it looks a lot neater if you have something to cover it up. So I have cut out a couple small circles today. The smallest one is for the center, right here, and this larger one is for the back. So I'm going to go ahead and glue those on for us. That way we can cover up that hole. We'll have a very strong base to add in the center of our flower. When you're doing the back, make sure that you don't push the flower flat to the table. You don't want to undo all those nice curls that you just put all that time and effort into making. You're going to do one more in the center, another little ring of glue. Push our nice center in like that. And now you should have that hole in the center completely covered. Now we're going to move on to curling and creating our centerpiece for this flower. To do that, you're once again going to use normal cardstock paper, but this actually doesn't require any template. In this flower, I actually cut out strips about 2 inches wide, like this, that I'm going to take and fold very carefully over into a curve. Now when I do this, I want to make sure not to crease my middle. I want to make sure that this part is still rounded. You don't want to fold it flat because that's not going to look very good in your middle of your design. And then once you have your curve made like this, you take your scissors, and keeping in mind not to completely fold the center down, you're going to cut small 1-inch slits along the edge of the paper. For time's sake, I have a piece already prepared for you. This is what it should look like when it's done. See how it's still a little bit rounded on the top, but it's full of slits so that it's very versatile, can move around a lot. Then you're going to take your piece here, and you're going to just start rolling it like this. Now, it doesn't look exactly like the center when you first start. It's going to take a little bit of rolling, but when you finish, it should look like this. Now, once you've got your center piece partially rolled, you're going to go ahead and fan these out a little bit, make them look nice and pretty, make sure they have a lot of volume to them. And for this size flower, this center just isn't quite big enough. So you might actually have to do 2 of these little things. And to do that, to make your center just a little bit bigger, you're going to take a line of hot glue along the side that you just folded here. And you're just going to put your other centerpiece on the edge here and wrap it around like so. Now, this is one of those cases where you want to make sure you use quite a bit of glue. When you fold the first center, you want to just go in dots and make sure that if you make any mistakes, you can go back and fix them. In this case, I recommend using lines of hot glue so that as you roll, it sticks consistently, just like that. Just a little more glue on the end here, and we should be good to go. All right, now we have a centerpiece that looks like this. Once again, we're going to fold these out a little bit, make it a little bit more full. If it comes unstuck, you just need to add a little bit more hot glue, but try to fan those out as much as possible. And if you need to push the design out a little bit so that it's not quite as flat in the middle, you can push right in that center and make it a little bit more 3D, just like that. Now, we have our center completely finished. It's time to assemble all the pieces together. We're going to take the main body of our flower, and we're going to take the centerpiece that we just finished making. Now, this is one of those times where you want to go heavy on this hot glue. You do not want to be skimpy with it. You want to just fill this up as much as possible. You want to make sure you have plenty of glue on the inside of your little curl center here, and you want to make sure you have glue in this middle piece as well. But one of the things is you have to find a happy medium. You don't want to be using so much glue that it spills out the edges, but you want to make sure you have enough to stick. Because if you don't have enough to stick, it's just going to fall right out, and you don't want that. Now that we've got our center glued in, we're going to do some last minute detailing, flatten these out, maybe adjust the petals a little bit so they curl a little bit more. And I'm going to hold this in place because the glue is still pretty hot and wet, so it's not completely dry. You have your finished piece just like this. Now, you can make as many of these flowers as you like, and you can build them into any sort of design that you enjoy. But for today, I simply showed you how to trace, cut, and curl the petals, how to assemble the petals into rings, how to curl and cut your center, and how to assemble all of the pieces into a final, beautiful product. This concludes my presentation for today. Are there any questions?